Saltwater wetlands habitat. Hi, I'm Cassidy, an eco-art educator at Artist Boat. I'm here to give you an overview of saltwater wetlands and tidal fringe wetlands. This habitat is not found within the Bolivar Habitat Preserve. However, it is a crucial habitat to the Bolivar Peninsula as a whole. Wetlands typically have three general characteristics: soggy soils, water-loving plants, and water. Scientists call these hydric soils, hydrophytic vegetation, and wetland hydrology. The two main wetlands I will share occur on the coast and are therefore saltwater wetlands. These are mudflats and salt marshes. Mudflats may look barren and empty when the tide is out, but that layer of smelly black mud conceals a whole community of worms, clams, crabs, and shrimp. Long-billed shorebirds feed on these burrowers during low tide and are joined by hungry fish, snails, crabs, and others as the tide rises. Salt marshes are coastal wetlands that are flooded and drained by saltwater brought in by the tides. Saltwater is anything above 5 salt parts per 1,000 and is usually brackish in salt marshes. Brackish water is a mix of salt and freshwater, creating a salinity between 5 and 35 parts per 1,000. They are marshy because the soil may be composed of deep mud and peat. Peat is made of decomposing plant matter that is often several feet thick. Peat is waterlogged, root-filled, and very spongy. Because salt marshes are frequently submerged by the tides and contain a lot of decomposing plant material, oxygen levels in the peat can be extremely low, a condition called hypoxia. Hypoxia is caused by the growth of bacteria, which produce the sulfurous, rotten egg smell that is often associated with marshes and mudflats. Salt marshes occur worldwide, particularly in middle to high latitudes. Thriving along protected shorelines, they are a common habitat in estuaries. In the US, salt marshes can be found on every coast. Approximately half of the nation's salt marshes are located along the Gulf Coast. This map shows that most of Bolivar Peninsula is covered in estuarine emergent wetlands, or salt marshes. These intertidal habitats are essential for healthy fisheries, coastlines, and communities, and they are an integral part of our economy and culture. They also provide essential food, refuge, or nursery habitat for more than 75% of fisheries species, including shrimp, blue crab, and many finfish. Salt marshes also protect shorelines from erosion by buffering wave action and trapping sediments. They reduce flooding by slowing and absorbing rainwater and protect water quality by filtering runoff and by metabolizing excess nutrients. Salt marshes line the landward side of Texas's inner bays with cordgrass, saltgrass, and other plants able to live in brackish water. Animals here must also tolerate the constant changes in water level and the saltiness brought to the salt marsh by tides and freshwater inflow. These marshes form when salt-tolerant plants take root on mudflats around the edges of bays. The plants slow the flow of water during high tide, allowing sediments to settle out and raising the level of the land, so more plants can grow. There are 4 primary salt marsh zones. The submerged zone, or low zone, is always flooded no matter the tide. This is where the seagrass lies along with other aquatic plants. The intertidal zone is a low zone. It's flooded during high tide. This is where you see smooth cordgrass, Spartina alterniflora. No debris will be caught in this area. In the supratidal zone, the high zone, only flooded at spring tides. The surface will stay moist and will collect old grass, which wildlife depends on for hiding and foraging. Spartina patens grows here. The fringe zone, the highest zone, is only flooded during extreme weather. This is where you're likely to find extremely tall grasses like Phragmites grass. Benefits of salt wetlands. Flood protection. Coastal wetlands protect upland areas, including valuable residential and commercial property, from flooding due to sea level rise and storms. Erosion control. Coastal wetlands can prevent coastline erosion due to their ability, above ground and below ground, to absorb the energy created by ocean currents, which would otherwise degrade a shoreline and associated development. For every foot of leaf blades above ground, there are about 6 feet of roots below ground. These plants have a network of fine roots that grasp onto other plants and things within the substrate. Just as vegetation on sand dunes protects coastal areas from erosion, salt marsh grasses break up waves to prevent erosion as well. Wildlife, food, and habitat. Coastal wetlands provide habitat for many federally threatened and endangered species, including whooping cranes, Louisiana black bears, and Florida panthers. 2 of North America's migratory bird flyways pass over the Pacific and Atlantic coasts, where coastal wetlands provide temporary habitat to waterfowl and shorebirds. Commercial fisheries. Over 50% of commercial fish and shellfish species in the southeastern United States rely heavily on coastal wetlands. Most aquatic animals seen here are juveniles, or simply always small. What makes it beneficial for juveniles to live here rather than in open water? Shelter, shallow water, murky, turbid water, food sources, etc. are within this wetland system. Grasses that are partially submerged offer hiding places and shelter for many types of animals, creating its own little food chain. 90% of all fish, shrimp, and crabs need a wetland to complete their life cycle, whether for mating, protection as an egg, protection as a juvenile, or simply living in the wetland throughout their life. Water quality. Marshes act as biological filters where pollutants from freshwater runoff can settle out before reaching the Gulf. Salt marshes are a vital part of the coastal ecosystem. Together with wetlands, marshes act as biological filters where pollutants from freshwater runoff can settle out before reaching the Gulf. Decaying vegetation from the marsh provides adjoining bays with food from many small marine animals. These, in turn, are food for fish, mammals, and birds. The beneficial bacteria in wetlands not only breaks down natural materials, it can also do some degradation of other things, human products such as fertilizer, pesticide, herbicide, and even some kinds of oils. Recreation. Recreational opportunities in coastal wetlands include canoeing, kayaking, wildlife viewing and photography, recreational fishing, and hunting. Carbon sequestration. Certain coastal wetland ecosystems, such as salt marshes and mangroves, can sequester and store large amounts of carbon due to their rapid growth rates and slow decomposition rates. Threats to saltwater wetlands. Human activity. Human activities which may lead to losses of coastal wetlands include urban and rural development, agriculture, and silviculture. These land use changes can also indirectly impact nearby wetlands by altering hydrology, through increased runoff of water withdrawals in the watershed. Most of this loss occurs in freshwater wetlands. Over half of the US population lives in coastal counties, intensifying the stress on coastal wetlands relative to inland areas. Natural processes. Coastal wetlands, especially estuarine and marine wetlands, are naturally altered by high energy events such as erosion and inundation from sea level rise and storms. The impacts of these processes may be magnified by climate change and shoreline armoring. Estuarine wetlands typically protect the coastline from erosion and flooding, but if sea level increases and development prevents inland migration of wetlands, more wetlands will be converted to open water.